if you're a social scientist, I can totally see the idea that, you know, your evidence for somebody having a particular characteristic is that they tell you that they do. And if they tell it to you over time, then you could think that, you know, they were right, or that it's a meaningful construct, at least for them, and it's lasted and so on. But, you know, what they would say is that if the person's gender identity changed, then that person is just gender fluid. So it's back to just being unfalsifiable. There's nothing that somebody could write down that someone who believes in all this stuff would take as evidence that that person was mistaken. Like, everything is just retrofitted. They say that detransitioners, you know, weren't mistaken. They're not detransitioning. It's just part of their gender journey. You know, it just is an unfalsifiable claim.
Welcome. What is your name, sir?
Eric Kaufmann.
Eric Kaufmann, and you are a professor.
That's right, professor at the University of Buckingham.
And what is your specialty?
Political science.
Okay, so we're going to be talking about things slightly out of your realm today.
Well, I also do ideas, so that's okay.
All right, perfect. You're very brave. You're a very brave man. And who are you? Who are you, ma'am?
I'm Helen Joyce.
You're Helen Joyce, and you're not from this island. You're from another island.
Yes, I'm Irish.
You're Irish. That's another island.
It is indeed. Next door.
Good. Well, now that we've clarified that, let's go through some claims. We can play some street epistemology. Okay, let's see. Anyone who conforms to the social construct of a woman is a woman. So don't move yet. Anyone who conforms to the social construct of a woman is a woman. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, move. Okay, why do you strongly disagree?
Woman's an objective category. It's not something you can identify in or out of. It just means you're female and human.
Oh, you can't. So your identification has nothing to do with being a woman.
It's just not the sort of thing you can identify as. It's an objective category. It's like saying, you know, if you identify as a fish, you're a fish. No, fish is an objective category. So is woman. Okay.
Now, you sir, you are on the disagree. Why are you on the disagree?
Because Helen's on the strongly. No, I'm joking.
No.
No. Okay, I'm on the disagree. I mean, I largely agree with Helen. I mean, I'm trying to sort of. Let's just say that there are probably some people who might define woman in a sociological way, and in a society, we can tolerate those people having that view. It's not my view, but I'm willing to say that it's going to be some people's view.
And if it's some people's view, to some people what would it take you to move to the strongly disagree? I'm just curious.
Well, to think that I suppose to think that anybody expressing that view that a woman is sociological, you know, that somehow should be clamped down upon more harshly, I suppose.
What do you think of that?
I'm not into clamping down on people's opinions at all. What I'm just doing is I'm saying that it doesn't make any sense, because the idea that there's a sociological view of woman is to say that woman is some sort of category that's made up of behaviors or characteristics or perceptions, other people's perceptions. And that automatically implies that it's possible for a woman, a real actual woman, to behave or appear or act or be seen in ways that would cast her out of being a woman. Okay. That a woman could be so unwomanly that she didn't count as a woman anymore. And I just think that's massively sexist.
Okay. What would it take for you to move to the disagree line?
Not having lived through the last 5 years of my life thinking very hard about this issue.
Okay. All right, fair enough. Okay, let's reset to the neutral. The world would be a better place if the sexual characteristics, behaviors, and aesthetics associated with each sex became disassociated from each sex. Now, I'm going to read this again. This is a very complicated claim. The world would be a better place if the sexual characteristics, behaviors, and aesthetics associated with each sex became disassociated from each sex. Think about it. All right. Okay, ready? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, move. Why are you on the neutral?
Because if you average out strongly agree and strongly disagree, you end up on neutral. I don't think those things are the same sort of things. I mean, the sexual characteristics are fixed, or if you think of sexuality as being on occasion sometimes fluid and you count that as a sexual characteristic, that's not fixed. But I do believe that men and women on average do have some differences in behaviours, interests and so on. And I, by and large, don't see any particular benefit, in fact, and some harm in telling people that they must, women must go into engineering, men must go into childcare, whatever. So I think it's it's conflating things that I feel go in opposite directions. If you'd asked me, I think there were 3 things that were meant to be dissociated there. If you'd asked me them separately, I'd have moved probably for all of them.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay. Did anything she say persuade you to move to the slightly disagree?
Yeah, maybe I'll go to slightly disagree.
Okay. What was it that caused you to move one mat?
Well, I mean, I do see the point that you want to allow for very feminine men and for masculine women and for different roles, and so and not essentially move to a situation where the sociological behaviors define the sex category. So that's sort of moving me in this direction.
Right.
Moving me in the other direction is again that view that actually there are different distributions of psychological traits between the sexes and different proclivities, and also that and this is perhaps one thing that wasn't mentioned, is I think that the society is richer when you have these different gender expressions, or of male and female culture, the interaction between the sexes, distinct sexes and their types, I actually think is a good thing, but not taken too far. You don't want to straitjacket people into this is what it means to be a man, this is what it means to be a woman, but at the same time having those gender ideals, I do think is a positive for society.
Interesting. This section. Oh, did you have a thought?
Yeah, I mean, I think, to say why I'm standing in the middle as a sort of an average, if I think of myself, I think I'm, ordinarily boring heterosexual woman who's married to a man and has 2 kids and always wanted to be a mother and likes being a mother. So that's all just very sort of, that's a gender norm. It's also just the reality of being mammals. If you want to have children, it's got to be me, not my husband who carries them. But I have a PhD in mathematics. So what was dissociated from what here?
What's 7 plus 5?
Oh, fuck off.
All right, I was going to say, what you're talking about, but I'm not sure you do.
What you're meant to do is to say, you can split the bill. And we've 25 people have had all different things at the table. I flatly refuse to get into these things. Anyway, it was all in infinite dimensional space. So what's 7 plus 5 had nothing to do with it. Anyway, so, in some ways I'm very ordinarily conforming, and in other ways not conforming at all.
Okay.
And I don't see that either of those are things that need to move. I think there has to be space for them, for people to do whichever they prefer. This forced we should make people more like some imaginary everybody's the same also gets my goat.
So the part of London we're in, as I walked back today, I saw not 1, not 2, but 3 women in burqas. Would that be a kind of consigning women to a particular aesthetic? For what is your take on that, for how that fits into the category of woman?
I mean, I don't think things fit into the category of woman. I just don't like that framing. I think that is a serious imposition on female people to put on them a requirement that they act in a way that's so restrictive to half of humanity, and for reasons that seem to me to be, really entirely sexist. That women must carry the burden of reducing contact between the sexes if you think that's bad, that women are the people who are meant to hide themselves so that men aren't, driven to lust or something like that.
Okay. All right, let's do another claim. Go back to the neutral. If a child says they're trans at school, their parents should be notified. I'm going to say it again. If a child says they're trans at school, their parents should be notified. Move. Oh, wow. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. Call heads or tails in the air. Heads it is. Yeah, I think that's heads. I've never seen that island money before. Okay, so you have a choice.
Okay.
You can go to the strongly agree and argue that position. Strongly disagree. Or you can send Eric over there to argue that position. Okay, all right. Okay, so the claim is, again, that if a child says they're trans at school, their parents should be notified. What is a really good argument for someone who stands on the strongly disagree? Tell Eric.
And no one's going to think that I think this, are they?
Well, you will definitely be memed out for this, and people will, because that's the way that people
Yes.
are. They're just lying.
Okay.
They're liars, they're dishonest, and they're manipulative. So absolutely they will do this.
Okay, so
that's what you do when you don't have argument.
Yeah,
You
all
attack
right.
people personally, and they're very good at it.
Why would you tell their parents? what is there to tell parents here? Do you tell parents that a child says they're gay? Do you tell parents that a child, is experimenting with some other aspect of themselves, that they've confided in you, they no longer believe in God when they come from a strictly religious family? There just isn't something to tell parents here. And moreover, if you do, you're potentially putting that child at risk because the parents might be transphobic.
Okay. Do you have a response to that argument?
Yeah, I mean, I think that parents ultimately have their children's interests at heart more than the state, and therefore the decision should fall with the parents rather than the state in terms of notifying the kids. So I don't agree with the teachers not notifying the parents. In addition, there's also an issue between, sometimes you've got a situation where the government is actually on the side of the parents, but the teachers, particularly activist teachers, have a different view and think that they're above the law. And again, I don't think that should be something that we allow. Now, of course, it is the case that you are going to get some parents who are very bigoted and might even be abusive. And in those situations, we have other laws that can handle that specific situation. But I think that is extremely rare. I would say in general, parents have the kids' interests at heart.
You then see a legal framework for this. So what if, as it could be suggested, she does not believe that, but what if it has been suggested that the parents have an irrational objection to the child being put on hormones and then if it's a girl, having her breasts removed? I mean, that would be an irrational objection, the claim would be.
Well, I don't think that's irrational, but you're right. What you put your finger on something, it's just who decides. Yeah. Who decides if the parent is over the line? What's the process for that? So I'm sure there are some parents, and there are maybe a few microscopic situations where the parents really are just crazy anti-trans, and it's really in the kid's interest to transition. I mean, there might be a really tiny number of cases, but the problem in a way is I think more of the error is going to happen by pushing and gender affirming than by being skeptical and notifying the parents. So on balance, the rule I would go with is you've got to notify the parents.
I know you don't believe this, but we just heard this claim. What would someone who actually believes that, who's thoughtful, and again, if we could get those people here, I wouldn't be asking you to do this, but they refuse to have conversation.
I know, with me too.
Yeah, okay, so what would someone who's standing there say?
I mean, the difficult thing for me is that I happen to know something about child safeguarding. So, I mean, what the framework is that you go through a process for any issue this is thinking, is the child at risk here? Is there a risk? And somebody who thinks there's no risk, you don't even start down that route. Like, there's just no reason. You're not constantly notifying parents of this, that, and the other. You notify parents if there's a risk, if there's a reason to do so, if you're concerned about something, if the child's falling behind or something. And what they would say to you is that trans is just a natural state of being. The child has told you they're trans. Like, why would you go through that process? And what somebody who wasn't standing where I'm standing, but does stand there, would say that trans is different from other things that a child might say to you because it does naturally raise safeguarding concerns. And, for example, people who are gender affirming often say that a child who isn't affirmed is likely to become suicidal. Well, if a child becomes suicidal, the parents really need to know. So, I mean, they're talking against themselves there.
That assumes, and I don't mean to be totally facetious, but I do mean that the assumption embedded in that is that suicide would be bad.
Oh gosh, I think most.
I know that sounds crazy.
I don't think they tend to make that argument. Someone standing here doesn't make that argument.
Okay.
They make the argument that unless you affirm the child, that affirming will help. Affirming will help the child's mental health. But I mean, that is not a proven assumption. But that is what they would say to you. They'd say that this child has something going on that is harming their mental health.
It's not a proven assumption, but doesn't that assume that evidence should play a role in belief formation?
It's more importantly, for this particular issue, it demonstrates that evidence should perform a role in risk assessment. So if a child says that they're suicidal, or that they're considering suicide, or that they're doing something that's talked about a lot related to mental health issues, what you would naturally do and what you should do is talk to everybody who has caretaking responsibilities for that child, unless you have a reason to think that that's a danger. So, if the parents are really horrific people, you might have to go another route.
Okay, so I just want to make sure I got this correctly. Isn't the assumption embedded in that evidence discrete, quantifiable, measurable evidence should override one's subjective feeling of reality?
Yes, I would say so. And I think somebody standing here would say to you that the evidence shows that gender affirmation is good for kids who state a trans identity.
Okay, if that's true,
Yeah.
then that must mean that they're willing to change their mind in the face of evidence that comes in against it. And because they're not, I don't think they are.
Yeah.
So because they're not, I don't think that belief is formed on the basis of evidence.
I agree.
Okay, all right, back to the neutral. All right. This is a tricky one, so you might have to think about it a little bit. The claim that people can transcend sex is related to the claim that people can transcend death. So I'm going to read it one more time. It's a very tricky claim. The claim that people can transcend sex is related to the claim that people can transcend death. Move. You can stay, it's 100% fine to stay on the neutral line. So neutral line means I don't know, I need more time to think.
Well, I'll go to slightly disagree.
Okay, so why do you agree with that?
Not in every case, and not in every discourse about trans issues that people can identify into this, that, and the other. But there's a sort of an element of seeing man as a god, or humans as gods, that can make themselves, remake themselves, that the sovereign will is everything. That when you say, I am, that you do something that nobody can disagree with, you've created reality. And in particular, you're creating reality about something that's quite fundamental. I mean, we are mammals. And the most basic facts about us are things like that we breathe, that we breathe air, that we are born, that we live and we die, that we have two sexes. Okay. And if you have that sort of mindset that speaking who you are makes who you are, I think some people on the edges of it, there's this idea of transhumanism. Transhumanism and transsexualism are related in some ways.
What is transhumanism?
The idea that we can become immortal, that in various ways, by freezing our brains or by uploading ourselves into computers or by robotics or whatever, we can turn ourselves into immortals. There's even a book called From Transgender to Transhuman by a trans woman. So it's about believing that there are no limits, that we can make ourselves and be anything. And I just don't think that's true. I think I can see why people want it to be true, but it's not.
Okay. First of all, do you have any thoughts on that? That was.
I mean, I don't.
Intense.
Yeah. I mean, I don't disagree with that, and I think there is this kind of mind. They call the mind-body problem in philosophy, right? And this is sort of on one end, which is the more kind of relativistic, that you're this disembodied mind and you can kind of remake the body. So I agree with that. I mean, I suppose where I'm disagreeing is I just think that in a way one's about the other world and one's about this world. And so the religious claim about life after death is really a kind of spiritual, otherworldly, cosmic order kind of argument. And this blank slate kind of issue about transcending your biology is much more of a kind of progressive left political kind of argument about this world. Okay,
that's very interesting. So if I were to distill that down, and I think I have it right, but if I don't, the claim is basically that that's a category mistake. It's confusing two categories, one relating to life and one relating to death. It's not like, if you would say the transcend sex is like the transcending taste.
I mean, everything that Eric says about this being a sort of a left-wing progressive, movement, that's all very true. And I agree that it's about this world and it's about breaking down categories because you see categories as oppressive or something. But if you think about the way that that's given utterance, it's given utterance by this idea of a gender identity, which is like a sexed soul. People say a trans woman is somebody who innately knows because they have an inner gender, an inner sense of themselves as really something. It's incredibly Descartesian dualist. It is actually quite religious in its tone and the idea that the soul is the real thing and the body is the vessel. And if you could update the body, that you would then be some freed from the bounds of humanity. I don't say that it's even the most central part of it. I say that it is related. And I do think that people who have strong desire to not admit to the fact that, we are very limited creatures. There's so much we can't do. In one life, you get to do almost nothing. And all of us have to accept that at various points in our lives. Things break down, we die, and that people don't like that. So it's just part of a sort of a general refusal to accept limitations.
Okay, go back to the neutral line, please. It is possible to be mistaken about your gender identity. Move.
Oh God, this is such a difficult one. It is possible to be mistaken about.
Well, because I got that from the gendered soul thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think this is the right place to stand for what I want to say, but it might actually be neutral.
Okay, so grab a board and a marker. Write down the best reason that you have for standing on that line. The best reason you have for standing on that line. Okay, I want you to guess what you think Eric's reason is.
That it's purely personal. So how could you be wrong?
So that's his.
Sorry, that's no. What is it you believe again? I'm getting very mixed up.
It is possible to be mistaken about your gender.
Oh, yeah.
What is the best reason? So you each wrote down the best reason you have.
yeah.
For what reason did he write on the board?
That people detransition.
Is that correct? Don't say what it is. Just yes or no. Is it correct?
No.
Okay. Now you're going to guess at hers.
People know how they feel about their gender.
Okay. Just yes or no. Is he correct?
No.
Okay. Guess what is. So you were mistaken the first time, but we're going to give you each 3 guesses. Guess again the best reason he has. What did he write down on the board?
So you think that someone can be wrong about their gender identity?
He's
is that
on.
right?
He's on strongly agree.
The trouble is he's strongly agreeing with something that's impossible.
He's
something
strongly
is impossible.
agreeing to say it is possible to be mistaken
It's
about your
possible.
gender.
Okay. Why would you think that it isn't that they detransition? Just that it's possible to be mistaken about pretty much anything. That, you know.
And the gender identity is no different.
Yeah.
Is that correct? Yes or no? Yes or no?
He wants to say
Kind of, sort of, yes, but it's close. It's very close.
But it's not a cigar. Close but no cigar.
Sure, close. I'll go with that.
I don't
Okay.
think they have that expression on this island or the other one.
They
do you really? Okay.
I mean, yeah, close but no cigar is probably
Okay.
where I'd go on that.
You're more advanced than I thought. Okay, so what is her best reason for, what do you think? I'm going to give you a second guess.
I guess that, so it's not possible to be mistaken about your gender identity. That maybe because it's given by your biological sex?
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not.
No, that's nothing to do with what I've written down.
Okay, so you have one more guess.
I'm really mystified.
And it's totally fine to say, I don't know. You have one more guess.
That maybe it changes over time, and that, yeah, maybe that's why.
Is it changed? Did you write down?
Yeah,
Okay,
no, I
before you tell her what yours is, you're going to take one final guess.
Oh, that I mean, it's kind of a riff on my last one. So I'm really struggling here. Why she would be opposed to this? Well, maybe that gender identity doesn't exist. That it's basically just a social construct, and essentially that people are just innately.
Well, that's clever.
Well,
Okay.
no, but I'm repeating what I said last time.
Well,
so I suppose
it's
that's
dressed up, though.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Not bad. I like
Yeah,
gender
I
identity
thought that was
doesn't
pretty
exist
good.
is good. Yeah,
okay.
that's close.
Why don't you share with him and read it, please?
I said gender identity is a pure speech utterance. It's unfalsifiable. So you can't be mistaken about it because it's unfalsifiable. It's like saying, someone can't be wrong about whether they have a Muslim soul or a Catholic soul. I'm an atheist. I don't believe in souls. Someone says they have a soul, all I can do is go, all right, fine.
Okay.
Right. Okay.
Can you share with her?
Sure. I mean, essentially that
Read it out loud to her.
the mind deceives,
Okay.
right? So we know from psychology that our mind tells us stories about things, and our memory can often get things wrong. So we can firmly believe that we have a gender identity, but this is something that could be constructed through things we've heard, the tricks our minds play on us, things that we want to believe, etc. So that's all I'm saying is that the mind you may think that you got a hold of some real deep spiritual truth, but it actually is constructed out of many different elements that you don't even see.
Okay, so now here's my question to you. You can put the boards away. Let's say that somebody was standing there and listening to your arguments. and they have no dog in the fight. They're trying to figure out the question of the claim, it is possible to be mistaken about your gender identity. They really don't know. They heard your argument. On which mat would it be rational for them to stand? A rational person, an honest, sincere, rational person should stand on which mat?
I think they might find that we didn't say things that are incompatible. I just think this thing, the mind deceives, but I mean, the mind has deceived you into saying that you have the gender identity, genderqueer or, demi-boy or something. But what other meaning could there be of being genderqueer or demi-boy, except that you've now just, come to that conclusion and said it? I think there is no there. So depending on what people want to take from the idea that there's no there, they could stand on either of these, really, because I don't think we're saying things that don't fit together.
Okay, so this is if that is true, and I'm not saying you have to accept the fact that as true, that would be extraordinary in that it would be one of the few times ever that I've done this in which it would be rational to stand on either it would be rational to stand on either of the lines.
I think many people listening would say that we're both wrong. They'd say that there really is something that is a gender identity. I mean, in a way, what we're both saying is there isn't a decent, stable construct of gender identity.
That's correct.
And if you think there is, then you would find neither of what we're saying at all convincing, and you would stand probably that it, I don't know where you'd stand, but you'd start from that point of view, which I think neither of us has.
Right.
Well, I mean, let me try and get some disagreement going, because I think that's important. So as a social scientist, I might say, well, my proof of falsifiability is a survey. And so if I asked you about your gender identity and you tick a box that says whatever, genderqueer, whatever, or something between male and female, I'll count that as evidence. And as long as it's reliable over time, then I'll give that to you as your gender identity. And so I'm not as radically questioning about gender identity. I think, people can have any identity. So I don't quite dispute that. What I'm more disputing is where that identity comes from. I don't think it just emerges out of the soul. I think it's got a huge ideological input. Yeah. So if, for example, an ideology is telling you to be different, to kind of because that heteronormativity is some kind of power structure, you should fight against it if you want to be an intersectional progressive. And it nudges you, you may not even realize it, but you're kind of being pushed in the direction of going to one of these alternative gender identities. So my claim is, I kind of almost accept that you can have a gender identity, but I just think that it's subject to social contagions and fashions and unconscious processes. So I don't believe in the kind of soul-based fixity of this thing.
Right. Do you have a quick comment?
I mean, I find that quite convincing. I just think that, if you're a social scientist, I can totally see the idea that, your evidence for somebody having a particular characteristic is that they tell you that they do. And if they tell it to you over time, then you could think that, they were right, or that it's a meaningful construct, at least for them, and it's lasted and so on. But, what they would say is that if the person's gender identity changed, then that person is just gender fluid. So it's back to just being unfalsifiable. There's nothing that somebody could write down that someone who believes in all this stuff would take as evidence that that person was mistaken. Like, everything is just retrofitted. They say that detransitioners, weren't mistaken. They're not detransitioning. It's just part of their gender journey. It just is an unfalsifiable claim.
So let me ask you a quick question. Is it possible for you to be wrong that there's no eternal soul?
I mean, it definitely is possible, but I won't know until after I die.
Okay. So is the idea that there's no eternal soul related to the idea for you about gender identity? Like, do you think that there's something eternal and immutable if one buys into the idea of a soul? Then one would be more likely to buy into the idea of a kind of subspecie aeternitatis gender, like under the watchful eye of eternity. Yeah.
I mean, most religious people I know are very much against the whole gender thing. They see it as very much the sort of thing Eric is describing as being a sort of a modern progressive, inverted commas progressive, political construct, that's about signalling within your tribe. And And I mean, often they find it actually blasphemous to suggest that God might have made the mistake of putting a pink soul in a blue body, or a blue body in a pink soul, a blue soul in a pink body type idea. You know, God does not make that sort of mistake. I mean, I'm not one of those people. I just feel like I'm being asked to comment on something that I don't even know where to start.
Right.
I mean, I was brought up religious, so it's not that I'm,
Okay.
you know, but I just feel like somebody's
Catholic.
saying, you know, yes, somebody's saying to me, you know, but it's totally neutral to call you a heretic.
Right.
You know, it's really not. That's starting from the point of view that the religion is right and that I have decided to step outside that and I know it's right. I just have no truck with souls.
Okay, so final question. So, not do you agree with his argument, but do you understand it?
Yeah, I think I do, and I kind of do agree with it.
Okay. And for you, the same question. Not do you agree with her argument, but do you understand it?
Yes, definitely. I mean, I can certainly see questioning of the concept of gender identity. Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right, thanks.
Great. That was fun.